Ravenwood was a small, forgotten town tucked deep within the woods of New England, the kind of place where the roads narrowed into silence and the mist clung to the ground like a second skin. On the edge of the town stood a decaying Victorian mansion, its tall windows broken, its roof sagging under decades of neglect. Locals whispered about it in hushed voices, calling it cursed, haunted, a place where the past never truly died. Long ago, in the early 1900s, the house belonged to the Whitmore family, wealthy, respected, and envied by many. But one winter night, the entire family perished in what was said to be a mysterious fire. No one could explain why their bodies were found intact, while the house bore no signs of burning. Since then, the mansion had stood as a shadow of grief, abandoned yet alive with something unseen. Those who dared to walk near it at night swore they heard the sound of a child crying from the upper floor, a soft wail that grew sharper with every step closer to the house. Some reported seeing a pale woman in a flowing white dress standing silently at the window, her eyes fixed on the road as though waiting for someone who never returned. The bravest, or perhaps the most foolish, would step inside, only to flee in terror after hearing their names whispered by unseen voices. One group of college students once ventured into the mansion with flashlights and cameras, hoping to capture proof of the supernatural. They entered laughing, mocking the legends, but when they emerged an hour later, only 2 of them remained. They spoke of doors that slammed shut on their own, mirrors that showed faces which were not their own, and walls smeared with fresh handprints that dripped with something red and warm. The others were never found. The town of Ravenwood has tried for decades to bury the legend, to ignore the house that looms at the edge of their lives. Yet even now, on nights when the fog rolls in heavy and the moon casts a blood-red glow, people claim they see the mansion light up from within, as though the Whitmores are still alive, reliving their final night over and over again. No one dares to enter anymore. The mansion waits, silent and patient, a wound in the earth that refuses to heal. And if you ever find yourself in Ravenwood, walking the lonely road that leads to that crumbling house, you may hear it too, the cry of a child echoing through the halls, begging you not to leave, and begging you never to look behind you. The story of Ravenwood Mansion spread far beyond the borders of the small town. Paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and curious wanderers all came, drawn to the mystery that seemed to breathe within its walls. Some left with shaky footage, blurred photographs of shadowy figures, or recordings filled with static and faint voices. Others were never seen again. One stormy night, a traveler from out of state found himself stranded in Ravenwood after his car broke down. Locals at the diner warned him to avoid the mansion, their faces pale with a fear that seemed too real to be superstition. But he laughed it off, saying ghosts were nothing but stories. With the rain pouring and no inn available, he decided to take shelter inside the old Whitmore house. As he stepped across the threshold, the air shifted, cold, heavy, suffocating. The front door creaked shut behind him, though he swore he hadn't touched it. His flashlight flickered, casting long, distorted shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Every step echoed unnaturally, as though the house itself was listening. Upstairs, a soft sound drifted through the darkness. It was faint at first, almost like the wind, then clearer, sharper, the cry of a child. He froze, his breath caught in his throat. "Hello?" he called, his voice trembling. No answer came, only the sound of tiny footsteps pattering above him. Compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity, he climbed the staircase. Halfway up, he noticed the portraits lining the wall. Faces of the Whitmore family stared back at him, their painted eyes glistening as if alive. But as his flashlight swept across them, his blood ran cold. The eyes were no longer painted. They blinked. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched endlessly, each door slightly ajar. From one of the rooms came the whisper of his name, not once but 3 times. He stumbled backward, his heart pounding, but the hallway behind him had vanished. Where the stairs should have been, there was now only darkness, endless and consuming. The last thing anyone ever heard from the traveler was a scream that echoed through the storm, a scream that seemed to rattle the very bones of Ravenwood itself. His car was later found abandoned, the keys still in the ignition, the driver's seat soaked as though someone had sat there, dripping wet. Now, Ravenwood Mansion is no longer just a legend. It's a trap, a wound that hungers for those who refuse to believe. The Whitmore family's tragedy has become a curse, feeding on every lost soul foolish enough to cross its path. And still, on stormy nights, the townsfolk claim they hear it, the traveler's voice joining the cries of the child, calling for help from inside the house that never lets anyone leave. Years passed, and the mansion continued to rot, its walls leaning, its windows blackened like hollow eyes. Yet, no matter how broken it appeared, the house always seemed to breathe. Brave souls entered, none returned. The townsfolk of Ravenwood stopped warning strangers, because no warning was ever enough. One night, a team of paranormal researchers arrived with cameras, wires, and machines that hummed with static. They were determined to prove the legend real. As they set up their equipment, one of the cameras caught something impossible, the front door closing on its own, followed by faint figures moving in the background, children playing, a woman drifting across the hall. When they reviewed the footage seconds later, the images were gone. The team pressed deeper into the house. The air grew colder. The walls seemed to pulse with each heartbeat. They reached the dining room where a long wooden table stood, set as if for dinner. Plates gleamed in the dim light, filled with rotting food that smelled of smoke and ash. One of them whispered, "It looks fresh." Then, without warning, all the chairs scraped back at once, as though invisible guests had stood to greet them. Panic spread. They ran for the door, but the hallway twisted, stretching longer with each desperate step. The front entrance was gone. Instead, only door after door, all leading to rooms filled with shadows and whispering voices. One by one, the researchers disappeared into the dark, their screams muffled as if swallowed whole. The last survivor, clutching his recorder, cried into the device, "The house! It's alive! Don't come here! It wants us!" Then silence. The tape ended with the sound of a child laughing. Weeks later, the recorder was found lying on the roadside outside Ravenwood, its battery dead, though no one claimed to have dropped it. The team was never seen again. The mansion is more than just haunted. It is a predator. It waits patiently at the edge of town, its broken windows watching, its doors slightly open, inviting anyone who dares. And those who enter never leave. They simply become part of Ravenwood, another voice in the endless whispers, another shadow at the window, another scream echoing through eternity. So if you ever find yourself driving through New England and the mist grows too thick If you see a crumbling Victorian house waiting at the end of a lonely road, remember this story. Don't stop. Don't look back. And above all, never answer when you hear a child's voice calling your name from the darkness. But the story of Ravenwood does not end with the mansion alone. For those who escaped the town, or believed they had, say the whispers followed them. One man who once dared to peek inside the gates left the house untouched, but months later he began waking every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., hearing the faint sob of a child just beyond his bedroom door. Another traveler swore he saw the mansion appear on a road where it had no right to be. Driving through another state, hundreds of miles away, his headlights caught the same broken windows, the same gaping doorway. He blinked and it was gone. But when he checked his car the next morning, muddy footprints of small children stained the back seat. The curse of Ravenwood had spread like a sickness, carried by every scream, every whisper, every victim claimed by its halls. Some say the Whitmore family is no longer trapped inside that house. They are everywhere now, moving through the cracks of the world, searching for new homes to haunt, new lives to ruin. And so the legend grows. Ravenwood is not just a place on a map. It is a wound in reality, an echo of sorrow that drifts through towns, attaches itself to strangers, and waits for the moment you let your guard down. If you ever feel watched while walking alone at night, if you ever hear the faint laughter of children in an empty room, or see a shadow standing at your window long after midnight, it may already be too late, because once Ravenwood notices you, the house will always find a way back. The Ravenwood Mansion no longer waits for visitors. It hunts them. The walls are swollen with secrets. Its timbers groan as though they remember the agony of fire, of screams, of a family that never found peace. Every soul who enters becomes another thread in its tapestry of sorrow, another echo in its endless hallways. Yet what is most terrifying is this: Ravenwood has learned to stretch beyond its foundations. Those who walk its grounds carry a piece of it away with them. The whispers sink into their minds, a parasite feeding on memory. Days later, they hear the faint creak of floorboards, though they live in houses of concrete. Weeks later, their mirrors show not their reflections, but the faces of the Whitmores staring back, eyes hollow, lips trembling as though begging to be freed. One by one, the survivors vanish. Neighbors say they move away without warning, leaving their homes unlocked, food still warm on the stove, lights burning through the night. Some are never seen again. Others are found wandering the woods miles away, whispering the same word over and over: Ravenwood. The government once tried to erase the house. In the late 1960s, men in heavy trucks arrived with orders to demolish the mansion. But when the machines roared to life, their engines failed, one after another. Steel bent, gears snapped, and workers claimed to see children's hands pressed against the glass of their cabs. One man stumbled screaming from the property. His hair turned white in a single night. Within weeks, the project was abandoned. The mansion remained untouchable. Now it stands like a scar upon the land, its silhouette cutting against the horizon, its broken roof resembling the jagged mouth of something alive. And though the townsfolk pretend not to see it, they know. They always know. For on cold nights, when fog drapes itself across the streets and the moon is blood red, the mansion lights flicker. The windows glow with a pale golden hue, as though a family dinner is being served inside, as though the Whitmores still laugh and talk and raise their glasses. But anyone who dares step closer will see the truth. Empty chairs, rotting plates, and the faint outline of figures frozen in their final moments. Some say Ravenwood is not a house at all, but a door. A doorway into a place where grief becomes flesh, where sorrow builds walls, where death is endless and ever hungry. Every scream feeds it, every whisper strengthens it, and every memory of it ensures it will never fade. So the story continues, passed from one generation to the next, told around campfires and in hushed diner booths, whispered between strangers on empty highways. A warning, a curse, a promise. Do not go to Ravenwood. Do not answer the voices. Do not step across its broken threshold. For once the house knows your name, once the Whitmores turn their hollow eyes toward you, there is no escape. You will join them in their endless supper, their endless sorrow, their endless night. And if you ever find yourself in New England, driving through the fog, and you see the shadow of a Victorian mansion rising, where no house should stand, keep driving. Don't look at the windows. Don't slow down. Because Ravenwood is patient. It waits for those who are curious, for those who are foolish, for those who believe they are safe. And once it finds you, the haunting never ends.